The billionaire burst into the garden, his eyes blazing with rage, because there, under the moonlight, his paralyzed daughter was in the arms of their black driver, swaying gently to music. Her wheelchair lay nearby, and for the first time in years, she was laughing, tears streaming down her face. Security rushed in, ready to drag the man away, but before they could lay a hand on him, the driver shouted something that made the billionaire freeze in his tracks. "I was there the night she almost died, I'm the reason she's still alive." What happened next not only stunned everyone in the mansion but brought the cold-hearted billionaire to his knees in front of the man he had judged, and the daughter he barely knew, Charles Whitmore, a man who controlled boardrooms and bent governments to his will, stood speechless as the words echoed through the garden. His daughter Emily, once a vibrant dancer, had been paralyzed in a car crash 2 years ago, a tragedy that shattered their family and left Charles emotionally distant, drowning in guilt he could never express. In all that time, he had buried himself in work, leaving Emily alone in her silent world of therapy and isolation. Daniel, the driver now standing defiantly before him, had only been hired 6 months ago, a quiet man with military precision and little conversation. Charles had never paid him much attention, seeing him as just another employee. But now, his presence seemed anything but ordinary. Emily reached for Daniel's hand, tears in her eyes. "He's the only one who's helped me feel alive again," she whispered. Charles demanded answers, and Daniel took a deep breath, revealing that he had been the medic who pulled Emily from the wreckage, holding her hand as she slipped in and out of consciousness, whispering to her that she wasn't alone. After the accident, haunted by her eyes and her pain, he tracked down the family, not for money or recognition, but to make sure she was truly healing. Seeing her cold, joyless existence, Daniel took the job as a driver just to be close, slowly trying to bring her spirit back. But he never expected to be caught, or for the moment of truth to come this way. Charles's face turned pale as Daniel's words sunk in. He staggered back, memories of the accident flashing before him, the late-night call, the wreckage, the moment he saw Emily unconscious in the hospital bed, and the guilt that consumed him ever since. He had blamed himself for not being there, for missing her last dance recital, for the argument they'd had just hours before the crash. Now, standing before the man who had saved her life and quietly devoted himself to her healing, Charles felt a wave of shame rise in his chest. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded. Daniel's voice remained calm, firm. "Because you wouldn't have listened. You see uniforms and titles. I saw a girl losing hope, and I wasn't going to let her fade away." Emily clutched her father's hand, trembling. "Dad! I needed you. But you were gone, even when you were here." The billionaire, speechless and broken, dropped to his knees in front of both of them, for the first time stripped of pride, wealth, and power. He looked up at Daniel, not as a driver, not as a stranger, but as the man who had given him back his daughter's smile. The entire staff, watching from a distance, stood in stunned silence. A single act of kindness had shattered years of pain, and the moment marked a turning point none of them would ever forget. The next morning, the mansion felt different, quieter, heavier. Charles had barely slept. He sat alone in his study, staring at a dusty photo of Emily from her dancing days, her joy frozen in time. For years, he had thrown money at doctors, therapists, and specialists, hoping one of them could fix her body, never realizing her heart and spirit were what needed healing most. Outside, in the garden where it all unfolded, Emily and Daniel sat beneath the oak tree, the same place they had danced. "Do you regret it?" Emily asked softly. Daniel shook his head. "Not for a second. Sometimes, the smallest moments, they bring someone back." Just then, Charles appeared, his expression softer, humbled. He approached them slowly, eyes filled with emotion. "I owe you both more than I can ever repay," he said quietly. "I let my guilt blind me. Daniel, you did more for Emily in 6 months than I did in 2 years." He paused, pulling a small envelope from his jacket. "This is for you," he added, handing it to Daniel. Inside was not just a check, but a letter of co-founding a new foundation, in Emily's name, aimed at helping children with disabilities experience dance, music, and joy, things that once defined her. Emily's eyes widened with tears. "Dad, are you serious?" He nodded. "It's time I learned to be the father you deserve. And Daniel, if you'll accept, I want you as part of this family." The driver who had come from nothing, who had saved a life and healed a soul, nodded quietly. For the first time, they stood together, not as billionaire and employee, but as people connected by love, pain, and redemption. Months later, the grand ballroom of the Whitmore estate was transformed, not for a gala of elites, but for the inaugural event of the Emily Grace Foundation, welcoming children with disabilities and their families from across the city. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed through halls once filled only with silence and wealth. In the center of it all stood Emily, radiant in a light blue dress, standing, yes, standing, with Daniel supporting her gently as she took her first public steps to the rhythm of music. The crowd erupted into cheers, many in tears, watching the girl who was once broken now walking, smiling, and dancing again. Charles stood off to the side, his eyes glistening with pride, not in himself, but in his daughter's courage and the man who helped her rediscover life. Reporters captured the moment, headlines soon reading, "Billionaire's daughter dances again, thanks to heroic driver." As the music softened, Charles walked to the stage, took the mic, and addressed the crowd. "Wealth means nothing if we lose those we love. I once failed my daughter, but through the kindness of a man I misjudged, I got a second chance. Let this foundation be a promise, to never let anyone feel invisible again." The room stood in applause, but amidst it all, Emily turned to Daniel and whispered, "You didn't just save me, you brought me back to life." Daniel smiled, eyes filled with emotion, knowing his journey had come full circle. The final shot faded to the three of them standing together, no longer divided by race, class, or past pain, only united by healing and hope. Narrator, voiceover, sometimes, the people we overlook are the ones who save us. Have you ever seen someone rise above judgment and change lives forever? Tell us below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories.